Hello, everyone. Welcome into another video. Today, we are going to be making this pools kind of liminal space environment, and I'm really excited to work with this today. This was a fun environment to make, and I wanted to do something like this and just kind of show you guys how I would go about making an environment like this. And we talk a little bit about the water plugin, kind of getting that set up and configured, and using things like world aligned textures to make the environment design a little bit easier. And yeah, this was fun to do. So I hope you guys enjoy. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And if you can, leave me a like and a subscribe. It really helps out a lot if you haven't already. And if you want to support me even further and actually get access to all of these assets and much, much more that I have created, you can check out my Patreon. I've got a link below to where you can sign up and get access to all of that, and also just join our great community of developers that are working on tons of stuff. So thank you guys so much, and let's go ahead and jump on in. Okay, here we are in our project. Now I am using a blank third person character project, and I have also imported a couple of things. Or actually migrated my first person character that I've created in previous videos, just so that I can just have a character to walk around and just get a feel of scale and things like that. Definitely not necessary, but if you want to check out how to create that first person character, I'll leave a link to that below. I also have imported a few different meshes that I have created, and we will create some materials for those. And I have got a few textures. Now, the first thing that we will want to do is we need to enable the water plugin. So let's go to Edit and Plugins. And if you search for water, you will find the water here. And then there's also a water extras that you can enable if you want to. It's not necessary, but this does include a test map so that you can check things out, and you might find that interesting. So once you do this, you'll need to restart the engine. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, and once we restart, you're probably gonna get this error message here about collision profile. They give you a quick, easy fix here. You can just click here to add an entry to your default engine INI, and that should fix that. So we can close that out, and we can also close out our plugins now. So let's go ahead and create a new level. I'm going to go File, New Level, and we're going to just do an empty level. And then let's go ahead and save current level as. And by the way, whenever I create a new project, I always like to create a folder under the content folder. And I like to call that 01_my content. And then I keep all of my folders in that folder. And the reason I do that is just because it shows up at the very top of the content folder then, and it just helps me organize things a little bit more. So I'm going to create a new folder called Maps, and we'll save our level in here. We'll just call it Pools. Okay. Just a couple of other quick things to note. If you want to get access to the actual plugins that we just installed, they will be under the engine content. And if you don't see the engine content, then you need to go over here to Settings and Show Engine Content. And then if you go into Plugins, scroll down to where we have water content and water content extras. So if you wanted to go and open that map up and check it out, that is where that content is. But we don't really need to worry about that with our project right now. The first thing that we need to do is we need to add a landscape on here so that we can actually have something to hold our water. So we're just going to create a very simple landscape. Go up here to Landscape, and I'm just going to change this to 15 by 15, should be fine. Create. Okay. Now I can hit Shift 1 to go back to the regular selection mode here. And now if we go up to add, we can search for water. And you'll see that we have a few different ones. I'm going to use the water body lake. So if I just drag that in, you'll see that it actually creates a spline, and then the water component is built into the spline. And this automatically deforms the landscape for us, which is pretty cool. And then we can click on these points here and actually change the size and the shape of our water. Now, you'll see it's kind of in a triangle formation here. You can modify this a bit more with one of these points here, you can hold Alt and then drag out to get another point here that you can then rotate. And I'll try and kind of make this a little bit more square shape here. Doesn't matter too much because we are not really going to see the edges or anything like that. All right, so something like that should be fine. Now, I'm not going to add a skylight or directional light or anything like that because this is just going to be an interior environment. So we don't really need any external lights. We don't need clouds or atmosphere or anything like that. Let's go ahead and create our materials. So let's go to my content, and I'm just going to create a new folder for my materials. And we're going to need a few different types of materials. So the first one that I always like to create is a basic master material. So I'm going to create a material, call it m_master. And this is just going to be a simple material that's going to hold 3 different textures. I'll grab these metallic textures that I have here. So we have a base color, a normal, and then an ORM, which is the occlusion, roughness, and metallic. And actually, before I forget, I've imported these. We need to open up our ORM textures and uncheck sRGB on each one of these. So we'll just do that really quickly. Okay. Save all. And then if you've already dragged this in, you'll need to change this to linear color. All right. So now our textures, our base color here will go into base color. Our normal will go into normal. And then for our ORM, the B is going to go into metallic, the G into roughness, and the red will go into ambient occlusion. And then we want to be able to convert these to parameters. So I can right click and convert this to a parameter, call this base color. This will allow me to create a material instance and then easily change these textures later on. This one, convert to parameter, will be our normal. And lastly, convert to parameter. This will be our ORM. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. And I think that's really all we will do for our base master material right now. We also are going to, we're going to want a emissive material. So I'm going to go ahead and create that, m_emissive. And this is very simply just going to be a color. So I'm just going to hold 3 down on my keyboard and click, or you can also type constant 3 vector to get that. And this is going to plug into, well, actually, before we plug it into color, we want to be able to control the intensity of this. So I'm going to use a parameter here by holding 1. Just hold 1 and click. And then I'll set this to a default of 5. And let's also set the default of our color to just be white. And we want to multiply this with our parameter here, which I need to convert to a parameter. This will be intensity. And from our multiply, we can plug that into emissive color. Okay, so now we can control the intensity of our emissive, and we can also set that to a default of 5. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. And then the next material that we want to create is going to be a world aligned material texture. So this one is going to be a little bit different. We're going to go world aligns. What this one will allow us to do, let's just show you guys a little bit of an example here. So if we have, let's just grab this wall here. And let's see, let's create a material instance here just for an example. We'll call this MI wall example. And I'm just going to apply this to that. And I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to swap these textures out for this ceramic tile texture that I have. So the problem right now is if I try to scale this, you will obviously see that it is going to stretch the textures out. Now you can control that by tiling the textures, but it gets a little complicated, especially when you want to tile them on the X, Y, and Z axis. So there's something that can make this a lot easier for us, and that is creating a world-aligned material. So the way that we can do that is in our material that we created here, we'll use these textures for our base textures. So again, we have our base color, normal, and the ORM. But instead of just plugging these directly in, we can get a node called World Aligned Texture. And now I can't plug this directly in like this. I need to convert this to a texture object. Then that will allow me to plug this in to the texture object. And then we can plug from X, Y, and Z, we can plug that into base color. And then if we change this to a square here, you can see that, I can control the camera, it is aligning the textures perfectly on every side. And then if we create a float here and just set that to something like, let's say 25, and if we plug that into texture size, then we can control the exact size of the tiling. So if we set this to something higher, like 200, then you can see that there. If I set it to 500, then we get a very large tiling. And again, it is consistent no matter the size of this object. So let's actually go ahead and just show this by creating a material instance for this. And I'll just call this MI wall. And then let's apply that to this. Now, if I scale this, you'll see that our textures remain consistent in every direction. And this makes things quite easy to build environments like this. Now, I have the meshes that I created are pretty well sized, and they are designed to work on the grid. So I think they're 400 by 400. So we can pretty easily drag these out and, line these up. But if we wanted to have a little bit different shape, or maybe, I wanted to have something that was a little bit more like this. It just makes it very easy to quickly add this in and then not have to worry about my textures not tiling or anything like that. Okay. So let's go back here and let's finish out our material. Let's go ahead and convert this to a parameter so that we can change that later, and we'll call that texture size. And I'll set this to be a default of 100. And then we want to do the same thing for these other two textures. The only thing that's going to be slightly different is our normal uses a little bit different node called world aligns normal. Okay, so we'll plug that in, but I need to convert that to a texture object. And then our texture size, we can use the same one there. And then again down here, we'll get another world aligns texture. Convert this to a texture object. And I'm actually only going to be using the roughness channel on this. There's not actually any information in the red or the blue channel, so the roughness is all that we really need. So I'm going to plug that into roughness, and then our texture size will also go into there. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. And that should be all that we need for our world aligned texture. So now we have our wall that is using that world aligned texture, which I can open up our material instance, and I can easily change our texture size if we want that to be a little bit bigger, or if we want it to be smaller, we can set it to any size we want. Now let's go ahead and start building this out. Let's actually just reset our location here. I kind of like to just always start at 0, 0, 0. And we will bring this up a little bit. And then I'm going to also use this as a floor. And just try to get this lined up. All right, and we'll bring this out here. And okay, so our water, you'll notice there are these waves that are happening, which are pretty cool, but we don't want them for this environment. I'm also just going to bring a point light in here just so we can kind of see what's going on. So let's go ahead and fix that. It's very simple. If we just click on our water component here, and then if we search for wave, we have the wave source. We can just set that to none, and now our waves are gone. Okay. The other thing that we need to do is add a post-process volume in here so that we can have a little bit more control over our lighting. And I want to turn auto exposure off, so we can do that by typing infinite extent unbound and check that. That will make it so that these settings apply to everything outside of the volume here and not just inside. And then if we find the exposure settings, we can check these first three boxes here and uncheck apply physical camera mode, and then change this to manual. And now we have full control over our exposure here. So I usually just leave this on 1 and then control the lighting in my actual lights here. That will make it a little bit easier for us there. All right, so let's continue on. By the way, I am pulling these or duplicating these meshes by just holding Alt and then dragging out from any direction, and that will just very simply duplicate these. Then I can select multiple ones. I keep selecting the water by accident. And then I can drag these out again. Okay, so I'm just trying to make a little bit of a starting room here. Something kind of like this. Okay. I'm not going to put a ceiling on here quite yet. I'm also just going to move our post-process volume out of the way. That really doesn't matter where it is, as long as it is in your level. And what I want to do is, I think our water level might be a little too high, or maybe we just raise this just a little bit. Let's raise this maybe just by 10 there. Okay, so I want to, oh, it looks like let's see. There we go. Try to keep everything consistent. So I want to have a little set of steps going down this way. And we can do that quite easily with the modeling tools. There are actually stairs that you can just create very easily. And I think what we will do is, I think 8 is too many. Let's try maybe 4. And then for our width, we could do this really anything, but since I already have these meshes set to 400, I'm going to set this to 400 as well. Actually, you know what? Let's just do 800 because I want this to go all the way across. And then try and go ahead and get this lined up just so I can see what it looks like before we confirm. So I want to do something kind of like that. And we can also go ahead and apply our material to it. Okay. Then we can decide maybe we want 5. I think 4 is going to be good for us. Let's go with that. Also, I'm just going to drag another light out here. Well, I can't do that until I confirm this. So let's go ahead and confirm this, accept. And now I want to just drag another light out here so that I can see this a little bit better. And then let's go back to selection mode. All right, so let's continue on by adding a floor down here. And then I want to have a wall continuing on. And we will bring this down to the bottom here. And then again, because we have our world-aligned textures, I can just very easily scale this up and not have to worry about the scaling of the textures, because it's just going to automatically scale with this, which is very nice. All right. Now, I want to have kind of a set of windows going along here. And I have created a second wall that has a window in it. We can let's see, let's go ahead and apply our material to that. And then we can get our wall and bring it in. And this is just a quick little tip. I want to quickly just get this in the same location as this. So I can, with my mesh selected here, I can go up to the location and I can copy this location. And I can do that very quickly by holding Shift and right-clicking right here. Then I can click on the mesh that I want to paste the location in, go over here, hold Shift again, and press left-click. And now that is in the exact same location. Then I can just rotate this around so that I have this. And we'll drag some of these out. I think we'll drag a few of these out because I want this to be a little bit of a hallway, maybe one more. And let's also do that with our floor here too. One more. Okay. And then I want us to also have a wall over here. Just flip this around. And let's do something like that. Now to fill in this area, I think what I will do is let's actually create a cylinder. Actually, let's do it with the modeling tools. So we can create a cylinder here, and it already has our material applied, which is nice. And the size doesn't really matter because we can scale that later. I think I will change the radial slices. That is the number of edges that we have on here. Let's set that to be maybe 32. That'll just give us a little bit rounder mesh. And since all of our other meshes are 400, I'm just going to set this to be 400 as well. And that should be good. Okay, now I am going to put this over here. I might scale this a little bit larger and bring this down just to give us something a little bit different looking so it's not all kind of these square shapes. Okay. Now again, since we're using our world aligned textures, everything is lined up. Now you will notice that with rounded objects, you will get a little bit, you kind of will run into some issues and you have to kind of watch out for that. It's not a huge issue here, but you can see like right here, it's having a little trouble scaling this because again, the way this is working is it's trying to wrap the texture all the way around. And when you have a perfectly circular object, and it's a little bit harder for that to do that. So that is just one thing to keep in mind with world aligned textures. You might have to kind of play around with that a little bit to find a good balance. But I think something like that looks fine and it's not super noticeable. So I am going to bring in just another couple of lights here. These are really just kind of what I call construction lights, very far from final lighting, but it's just lights that I'm adding into the level just so I can kind of see what it looks like and what's going on here. Now we need to either extend our floor here, or I think I'm actually going to bring this wall in like this, because I want this corridor to be a little bit more narrow. Something kind of like that. And then we will drag out a few more here. Okay. And then our cylinder here, I think I'll add maybe a couple of more. Maybe one down here. And then let's also put one over here just to kind of break this up a little bit. Something kind of like that. Looks kind of cool. For right now, I'm going to just add an end here, but we're going to kind of make this into another area. But just for the moment, I just want to kind of close it off just so I can see how this looks. And I think that looks pretty good. Another thing that we might want to do is just to grab under characters, we can just grab a mannequin here. Just bring this in just so we kind of have a sense of scale. Also, since we're using our first person character, I can go ahead and go in here and walk around. Okay, so we need to disable the collision on our water here. which we can do really easily. We just click on our water. We can search for collision, and let's just set the collision preset to be no collision. There we go. Okay. So now we can just get a feel of the environment here. And I think that is looking pretty good. I might want to bring these in just a little bit more. And then I'll just extend this wall just a little bit. To something kind of like that. All right. Let's go ahead and create a ceiling here. I'm just going to grab these four and hold Alt and drag up. And then we'll need to go out this way. And then we want to fill in this area at the top here. Now, we do have world-aligned textures, but I can't really stretch this without stretching the holes there. So I will just drag this up, and then we'll rotate that by 90. And we honestly could leave it like that, but I'll just bring it down to about right there. And we'll just drag these out to finish out the length of this. One more. Okay. And then I'll just drag these out. By the way, I'm going in and out of lit and unlit mode just by hitting Alt and then hitting either 3 or 4. 3 for unlit mode and 4 for lit mode. Okay. Now, already, I think this is looking pretty good. Okay. But there is one other really big thing that I want to do, and that is to create this kind of appearance of white light coming through the windows here. And we can do that with our emissive material that we created. So I'm just going to quickly drag out another wall here. And I'm going to put this right on the edge there. And we'll do that all the way across. Okay. I want to just make that a little bit more even. And when I do this, it goes too far. So I can change that by adjusting the size right here. I'm going to set it to 0.1. And then that allows me to have a little bit more fine control over that. Now, the emissive material that we created, we can use on those meshes. And I'm going to create a material instance from it. Oops. Mi emissive wall. Okay, and then I'm just going to select all of these walls. And now if we apply that material, then we get this, which looks really cool. Now I think it's way too bright, and that's really just because our lights are really bright. So we can bring those down to something quite a bit lower. Yeah, I am liking the look of that quite a bit. Now, I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't know if these windows are too low. No, I think that looks pretty good. We could adjust that if we wanted to, but I think that works pretty well. Just move our guy out of the way there. All right, so let's add a few more small details in here now. The other thing that we can do is we can play around with the color of our water here. It might look a little too kind of bluish greenish. Now you might like that, but you can adjust the color, and I'll show you how. If you scroll way down here to where you see the water material lake, we can open that up, and we can have a lot of different parameters that we can change here. Mainly what we want to change, though, is here we go, under the global vector parameter values, the absorption. So this will change the color of your water. And you can kind of just play around with this to get it wherever you want. I think something kind of a little bit more like this looks pretty good. You can also adjust the opacity right here under the alpha. So if you want it to be really kind of clear, you can increase that. If you want it to be much darker, you can decrease that until it's literally almost black. But I think somewhere around there looks pretty good. I want it to kind of feel a little unsettling. Now, the only thing that you need to be careful with in here is that you don't change this value over here. If you do, it will just immediately set your color to be black. So the only values that you want to change are the values in here, and then you can play around with the values here. Okay, but I think I am pretty happy with that. There's a bunch of other values that you can play around with in here if you want, but I think that is pretty good. Yeah, looks good. Okay. Now let's add a few more details here. So I've got some railings that I'm going to add in here. Let's see, they are in my meshes here. And I have this one. But I think, I don't know, we could put that in the center. Doesn't really fit in here. Which I might need to adjust this in Blender just a little bit, which I can. For this environment, let's use, let's see, I've got just a basic, literally just a cylinder here. But what we can do is use a metal material that I have. And then I also have this rail holder. So let me just grab this location, apply it to that location. Then I can do something like this. And let's see, we'll turn that around and just kind of angle that down. And then we'll just try and get this right on the edge of the wall. Might need to turn my snapping off completely. Something kind of like that. And now I want to create a second one, but I want to go straight down. And instead of trying to do this and then line it up perfectly, what we can do is just change our transform here from world space to local space. Then I can go back and turn my snapping on, and then I can very quickly just drag this down to where we snap that perfectly. And I think these are maybe a little too small. I'm going to increase the scaling. Maybe more kind of like that. And then I'll need to pull this out a little bit. And let's also add one more of these at the end here. And then I think I'm just going to pull this back maybe 2 and pull this one back 2 as well. Okay, let me just play here. Just see if that feels kind of natural. Yeah, I think that works well. Now let's go ahead and apply our materials to this. So let's kind of do this by default as well. I've got some other railings. I'm going to go ahead and just apply all of these because these are all going to be my metallic texture or material. And off of my master material, I'm going to not duplicate. Didn't mean to duplicate that. Let's create a material instance. Call it MI metal. And we can just go ahead and apply that on all of these. Okay. Now, if you don't have a metallic texture, it's actually very easy to make a metallic texture or material. I can show you how to do that. If we just do m underscore metal, really all a metallic material is a color. So hold 3 and click. We'll change that to something kind of around there, almost a white. We'll plug that into base color. And then we just need 2 different values here. So I can hold 1 and click, and we'll plug this into metallic and roughness. And you'll see already this kind of gets to be a shiny, glossy look. And if we set our metallic to be 1, then we basically have metal. And then you can play around with these values a little bit. So we could also convert these to parameters. We'll call this metallic. We'll call this one roughness. And we'll do our base color as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. And then we can create a material instance. MI metal, we'll call it 02 since we already have another one. And if I apply that to that, you see it's basically the same thing. This really even gives you more control because you can now go in here and you can adjust your metallic, or if you want this to be a little bit rougher, you could add some roughness to that. So that's just another way to create a metallic texture if you don't already have one. Okay, let's also go ahead and save everything. Okay, so I just got an error that is saying that it's unable to save this water material. I'm not sure if that's just because you are not able to edit that material. It is a material instance, so I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to save it. But I'm going to go ahead and continue, and I just created a duplicate of that water material and then replaced my material with that. And then I'm able to save that and then edit those values on there. Okay, so let's also just clean up a little bit here. Just close some of these materials that we've created and all of these meshes. Okay. So now let's bring in a few more meshes. We have got, let's see. I have a couple of different lights here. Whoops. And they obviously don't have any textures on them, which we will fix that in just a second. And with these, let's go ahead and add some materials to these. So I'm just going to open this up. With this, I went ahead and added 2 different material slots so that we can add, go back to our materials. I can add my emissive, let's do the wall. I can add that on here, and then on the edge, I'll do my MI metal, just to give me kind of a basic light like that. And actually what we might want to do is, let's see, let's actually duplicate our MI emissive wall, and let's do MI emissive light, just so that we can change these values and not affect the wall if we want to. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing here. And it looks like I made a mistake and actually forgot to add another material slot onto here, which is actually good because I can show you guys how to do that. So right now we just have this one material slot, but what we can do is actually edit this using the modeling tools. So if we go to the modeling, and then if we go to attributes, I believe it is, we can edit materials here. And under active materials, we can add another element. That adds another material slot for us. And then we can change the active material to the one that we just created. And then we have this little paintbrush here to where we can paint on where we want to add a new material. And then we can also get our emissive light that we just created, put that in there, and then we can assign active material. Just make sure that you are on the correct active material. And now we have added, if we accept, we have added that material slot on there. And now you'll see that we actually have two material slots. So that is set up by default now. Now I also have, let's see, I have this vent here, which we can just use a metallic texture for that. Let's do MI metal, let's duplicate that, and we'll call this one MI vent. And let's apply it to the default. So open that up. And I think this is way too shiny. So let's, actually, you know what? Let's use our metallic, our other metal 02. So I'm going to replace this here. And then we can open this material instance up. And we can, let's see. First of all, let's change the color. Let's bring this quite a bit darker, something kind of like that. And then let's also bring up the roughness somewhere around there. Okay. All right, I also have this wet floor sign, which I think is a little too small, but we will edit to that really quick. And let's go ahead and create a material for that. I can just duplicate any of, well, actually not our world aligned texture, world aligned material. Let's do it from our master. So create material instance, MI floor sign. Go ahead and apply that, open this up, and then we'll replace our textures here. And that is going to be these textures here. Again, make sure that your ORMs are checked or unchecked for sRGB. And we've got that. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to do is, if this is going to be our starting area, I want to maybe do something like, maybe give an appearance that we had an entrance here. And maybe we kind of came in through here or something like that. So I'm just going to add some additional meshes here to kind of create that look. So let's do something like this. And we'll add another one over here. And then we'll close this off too. And I might want to even do something like make this a little bit bigger. Let's actually do it like this. Let's just drag one out. I'm going to lower this down to there. And again, because we're using the world aligned textures, this just makes it very simple to do something like this. Then if we want to change our size, maybe a little bit larger opening there. I think that's actually too big. That might have been where I started. I think that's good though. So I want to give kind of the appearance that, maybe we crawled through here or something and now we can't get back out. And this is pretty dark in here. This is just because I think this light is probably way too bright. Let's see. Yeah, we've got this set really, really bright. Another thing that we could do is if we really want this to kind of look like a black void, we could create just like a black material, or we could just do something like we can make a copy of our vent here. Or actually, we could probably use this metallic texture. Although that's quite shiny looking. Okay, let's just do this. I'm going to just duplicate that. We'll call that MI back wall. And apply that to, whoops, didn't mean to do that. We'll just apply this to this. Then we'll open our material. And let's bring our roughness way up. We'll set it at 1. And then it will just be kind of pure black with lots of roughness. And that way it just kind of looks like there's just an empty void back there. Okay. Now, another thing that I want to do is just to add a little bit more kind of variety in here. I'm going to just do something like this. And increase the size of these. Okay, to where we get something like that. And then I'm also just going to, let's actually do it from this one. Drag up here. Bring this in a little bit. And do something kind of like that. Just so we have like this little, I don't know, shelf area. And I think it could look cool to maybe add like a couple of lights in here. And actually, before we start doing that, let's create a blueprint for our lights. Let's also go ahead and save all. I'm going to uncheck the water lake material. And let's go into blueprints. Going to create a new blueprint actor. We'll call this BP Light 01. And I will add our light in here. And I'm going to add a spotlight. We'll just rotate that 90 degrees to where it is coming right out of that. Something kind of like that. And then I'll also attach that there to give ourselves control over some of the variables here. Let's get our spotlight. And first of all, let's set intensity. By the way, this is in the construction script that we're going to do this. This will allow us to be able to adjust these parameters very easily outside of the blueprint. I'll drag out of the new intensity here and promote that to a variable. Call that intensity. I'm going to uncheck this right here to make this a public variable. And then when I compile, I can set a default value, which I'll set to 8. Now what I can do is if I bring in the blueprint that I just created, it looks like our light is not actually shining. Let me see why that is happening. Oh, I see. Because we have our unit set to unitless, and so it's using a very high number. So if I set that to candelas, then our light is working. Our light was working, it just wasn't actually shining or showing. Make this a little bit bigger. And then I can do something like put a few different lights in here. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to do is give myself more control over the settings here. So we can also maybe set attenuation radius. That's something else that we would want to have access to. And we'll create a variable for that. So promote that to a variable. That will be attenuation radius. Set it to be public and compile. And then I think I'll set the default value to be maybe 400. I think it's set to 800 by default, which is quite high. And then I might also want to do some things like if we want to turn the shadows on or off. So set shadows. Let's see. Set cast shadows. And we will create a variable for that. Shadows on, we'll call it. And by default, I'll turn that on. But now, as you see, once we start adding more and more variables in here, oh, I didn't set that to be public. Public, compile, and save. Now I can select all of my lights, and if I don't want the shadows on, I can turn the shadows off. If I want to increase the intensity of the lights, I can. I can change the attenuation radius very easily. So it just gives me a little bit more control there. Okay. Now let's also add a vent here. Flip this way, I think. And I think we'll make it a little bit bigger. Let's just set that to be 2 overall. And maybe we'll kind of put one up in the corner there. Something like that. I'm just going to delete these since I have those in the level and I have blueprints for the other ones. Let's also go ahead and create a blueprint for our other light here. Close some of this other stuff that we're not using. And it's probably going to give me an error trying to save, that water material. That's fine. We'll just continue, not save that. Okay, so let's create another blueprint of actor. This will just be BP light 02. And that will be our light 02. And for this one, I'm going to add a rect light. And we'll parent it to that. Then I just want to rotate it, bring it up a little bit, and just so I can see a little bit better, I'm also going to set the scale to be 2. I think these lights are a little too small. So I can see my perspective. I'm just going to go to top view. And then I want to change this, the source width here, to be something a little bit closer to the edge, kind of like that, I think. And then we'll just add a little bit of an angle, maybe like 70 on the barn door angle there. And I think the length is fine. Okay, compile and save. And we'll do kind of some similar things here in our construction script. So actually, we could just copy all of these, Control C. And when I paste these in here and hook this up, now when I compile, it's going to give me an error saying, hey, we don't have these variables. But we can very easily create these variables just by right-clicking, create variable, and create variable. Then if we compile again, then that error goes away, but we still have an error because we need a target, and the target will be our rect light. So we'll do the same thing here. Okay, now if we compile and save, we should be good to go. So we can delete this guy because we now have a blueprint that we can bring our light in, and this is now a functioning light that we can have much more control over. We can also just go ahead and delete our light here because we can control our light with this blueprint. And I think we need to increase the, let's see. These need to be set to be public. I'm going to increase the attenuation radius. Okay. So when we pasted these in, it looks like it just defaulted these to 0. So I'm going to set the default intensity to be 8. The default attenuation radius, I'm going to be set that to be, let's say 800. And then shadows on, I'll leave shadows off right now. Okay, now we should have, let's see, that is still not working. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, I forgot. We got to change this to candelas. Compile. There we go. All right. So that is looking pretty good. Might bring in another vent here. Maybe one over here. And we'll do something like have it over here. And then what we'll do is we'll place sounds in these locations to really kind of create more atmosphere for this, which I think will sound really good. And I'm also noticing that we can kind of see through the mesh here. I'm going to flip this upside down. That way we won't be able to see the wall there. We could fix that a few different ways. but I think this will be fine for our purposes. Do something kind of like that. Okay. Looks like I also forgot to change my metal here. Just going to quickly change this back to MI metal. All right, I think this is looking pretty cool. So I'm going to take a quick little break here. And when I come back, we will add some sounds and kind of make this a little bit more atmospheric. But I think we have a good start. All right. Right, guys, I am back. And I was thinking while I was taking a little break, I wanted to do one more room. So I am going to delete this wall and we're going to create one more little section here. I want to grab our stairs if I can. There we go. And let's bring these over here. And I'm just going to create a little set of stairs that leads into our next room here. We'll just scale these down a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. Also looks like this is not quite the same length here. So I'm just going to bring that out to where I think that is matching there. And then I want to just grab one of my floors and let me go ahead and turn snapping back on. And let's bring this over here. And let's just do something kind of like this. All right, and maybe we come out here, put one more over here. And then let's grab some walls here. And to get this to line up perfectly, I might put a column there. We'll see. Let's also just bring a light in here, just kind of as a construction light. I'm going to turn this up kind of bright just so that we can see what we're doing. All right, I think we will maybe go one more over here. One more over with this. And then I'm going to turn this inward like this. And we'll go with something kind of like that. And let's build down this way just to kind of create a little room here. Ah, okay. I was wondering why those weren't lining up perfectly. Looks like I changed the scaling slightly over here. So I'm going to reset that back to actually Control Z. Undo my lock there. I just want to set the, on the Y, I want to set that to 1. Not really a huge deal, but I just didn't want those overlapping like that. And again, since we have the world aligned textures, we could absolutely just be going down like this, but I'm just choosing to keep things modular like so. All right. And then I want to have just like a little bit of a lip coming out this way. Maybe kind of about like that. And then we're going to go down this way, same way. This is going to be the edge of another little pool here. Okay. And then I think maybe right here will be the other edge. And then let's bring our wall down this way. I'm also going to reset this one to 1 just for consistency. Now I think I'm going to make this room a little bit taller for the ceiling because I want to put a second floor right here, or at least kind of give the illusion that there's a second floor there. So I'm just going to grab these, hold Alt, and scale them up. And I'm going to push them into about there. And then I'm also going to pull out a few more this way. And we'll do maybe one more this way as well. This is just going to be a little hallway. And then I'm going to grab these and just go straight up. And then I'm going to move this over for an edge of this hallway here. And same thing here. We'll just bring this out, and we'll also bring this over here. Okay. Same thing here. Okay. And then I think we will, let's see if we just raise this up. Kind of like that, I think is good. Go over 1. Actually, we'll just fill in the section here just by resizing that. I think we will need to do something here, but I have an idea what we can do, but we'll see. And then we're just going to raise these up. Okay. And then, yeah, I think that's good. Let's just make a ceiling. Let's see. Let's reset these back to 1 just so we're consistent. Okay, then I will grab all of these. And just quickly add in the rest of our ceiling. Okay. Now, what do I want to do? Let's bring this over. And I'll just resize this just to fill in the rest there. And I think I want to bring this out just a little bit. And I think I want to make this a little bit deeper. So I am going to, how do we want to do this? I'm actually just going to delete these. Whoops. And I'm just going to bring this down 1 more. I'll grab all of this as well. Actually, we have ceiling there. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing here. And then let me move this over. And I'll just close this off like this. Okay. Yeah, I think I like that a little bit better. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm trying to just get whatever feels right. Okay, I think that's good there. And I'm going to close this off here. Actually, you know what? Let's bring this in a little bit closer. Something kind of like that. And then we'll have maybe another set of stairs. Bring these over here. Let's see. Let me actually just pull these up, hit ends. There we go. End to drop those down. And then we'll just add a little stairway here to another little hallway that we'll create. Okay, something like that. And then we'll get a floor piece, bring that up there, move it over to connect it here. Looks perfect. And then I want to just extend this hallway out a little bit. You also just bring one more light over here for the time being. Okay. I think that should be good. We'll go about that far. I'm not really going to intend to really see much past this. So as far as the level design goes, we're really not going to do much here. This is really just kind of for looks. Okay. Now I'll just bring this up. And then I think I'll also bring one over here. And I think, let me see here. I think we're going to need to make that a little bit taller, or that may actually work pretty well. Yeah, I think that will work well. Okay. I do want to have a ceiling here, though. I'll just duplicate this piece and bring it down. And we'll just close this off here. Looks like, let's actually raise these pieces up just a little bit. Oh, I need to do it over here as well. Okay. And then I'm just going to close this hallway off again. We're not really creating this to be an actual playable level. Obviously, if this was playable, you would want something to continue on here, but this is just really for looks here. Okay, and I don't like this here, so let's move this all the way in. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. I may bring all of this in just a little bit. I want this to really feel kind of narrow here. And then I want to just line this up because that's going to annoy me. So I'm just going to change this to 1 and just get that perfectly aligned there. And then I think I'm also going to raise this just a little bit. Let's see, how do I want to do this? If we raise this up, let's say we go to there. Now we're going to need to change all of this. And then we need to just fill in this little area here. We could do this a bunch of different ways. I'll just slide this over. like right there. And then I'll just extend this out to right there. Okay, I think that looks good for what I'm wanting. I think this part I'm going to just move over to right here. Kind of like that. And I'm going to bring all of this over. I want there to be a little bit more of a lip here. We'll also grab this side of the wall here. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. This is all just kind of a feel, whatever I like the look and feel of. And then I'm going to change this back to 10 just to make it a little bit easier. And add a little bit more to the back here. Maybe one more. Okay, that's what I'm wanting it to look like, is just kind of this dark black void that's heading back that way. And I think I'll do the same thing over here. We almost are kind of connecting this back to the start here. We were actually making a game. We could maybe do something to where we do connect it back to the start. That could be kind of cool. All right, let's grab the ceiling. I think that should be good. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Now I want to do one more thing. I'm going to just grab this, bring this up to, I don't know, maybe about right there. Okay. And then the last thing I want to do up here is I'm going to grab one more mesh that I created, which is going to be this railing. And I think we need to scale this up a little bit. Let's go. Let me grab my human reference here. Just duplicate him. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So we'll start this maybe right about there. And then we're just going to drag out, and looks like I didn't set those to line up. Maybe I set it to line up on 5. Yeah. Okay, so that lines up on every 5th unit, which is fine. And we're just going to go all the way over. Grab a few more of these to make our lives easier. And then maybe one more. There we go. Okay. Cool. Now, I don't really love the way this metal is looking. Let me see. What are we using here? Okay. One thing I might do, let's actually just try our other metal material that we created that was just a very basic metallic. Let's see. I think it was, what are we using there? MI metal. Was it this? Was it just this one? Yeah, it was just this one. Okay, so let's create a material instance. And we'll call this MI, MI metal railing. And I'm going to apply it. Whoops. I wanted to open this. All right, and we'll just apply that to this. And let's just see if I like that any better. It's still kind of shimmering quite a bit. Let's see, this could be due to anti-aliasing. Let's just take a look and see. I'm not sure what anti-aliasing I'm using here. Let's turn it off. Okay, that looks terrible. That did not do anything. Let's try TAA. Still looks pretty bad. Let's see. Okay, so I think I solved it for the most part. I did a couple of things. I increased my roughness just a little bit, and I also changed my scalability section or settings on the reflections. I changed them from high to epic, and that helped out quite a bit. You could go up to cinematic if you wanted as well, but seems to just be setting it on epic works pretty well. I guess you could also turn it down to medium, and that kind of just removes all of the reflection on it. But for whatever reason, high just does not really seem to work very well. There are probably some other settings that we could adjust in the actual reflection settings. I will try to do some more research into that. But I am pretty happy with the way that looks right now. Let me actually go back and look at this one. Yeah, I think this one looks better as well. I think when we had that set to high, yeah, there's kind of some weird flickering that's going on. And I'm not really sure why that is only showing up on the high setting. It seems to be fixed with the setting that to epic though. Anyway, I think we are good to carry on. Okay, the next thing I want to do is add a base down here, but actually before we do that, let's also fix this area here. I think what I'm going to try, I may change this, but I'm going to try to create like a little kind of a square pillar that comes out this way. So something kind of like this, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit, move one over here as well, and then we'll just move one right here to kind of close this off. Okay, and let's see, let's just adjust this till we get it where we want it. Yeah, kind of like that. I think I like having this little lip here. We could raise it up if we didn't like that, but I kind of like that, just to kind of break things up a little bit. And then another thing I want to do is just add another little, oh, I see that we overlapped there a little bit. I want to add just another little section in here, kind of like we did in the other area, for like a little light or something. So let's see, let's go maybe kind of like that, and then we'll move back and just bring this down like so. Let's see what it looks like if we have a little bit of a lip up here as well. And then I just want to fill this area in here. This is not the most efficient way to do this, but it's a quick and kind of dirty way to do it, which is fine for our case here. If you were actually making a game, you'd probably want to take a little bit more time with this. Okay, And then let's bring one over here as well. All right. And then I want to bring these lights, kind of do the same thing that we did here. Just going to duplicate all of those, bring them over. By the way, to move the object and the camera like this, I am holding shift while I'm grabbing and moving these. And then that will allow me to move the camera and the objects at the same time like that. Okay, I think we can probably add one additional light in here. So I'm going to grab just one and bring that over. And I don't think I do like this lip here, just because I want to be able to see the lights. Unless maybe if we move these back. Yeah, I think it's still too high. I'm going to just grab the ceiling as well and bring it down. Yeah, I think we'll just bring it all the way down. And then I'm going to move the lights back kind of in the center here. Okay. Now, I'm not sure where... Looks like I'm getting a light right here. Let's see, where is that coming from? Oh, it might be coming from this. Ah, yeah, okay. That's fine. That's just kind of a little construction light that we have right now. All right, now I want to add a base here. So I'll just grab this. And let me see. I'm also going to grab this railing here. So I want to do something like this. Kind of get a feel for where, well, actually, that looks pretty much perfect. Okay. Let me actually set these to 100. That'll make it a little bit easier. And I'll go back one extra there. And then I'm just going to grab all of these. And we'll go over one more. Okay, now instead of just making the same steps that we made here, let's do something a little different. And let's actually add a cylinder. Actually, we already have cylinders. Just grab one of these. Turn this back to 10. And I want to do something. Let's see. I want this to be really like 45 degrees. I think if we move it over one more. Oh no, we were actually rotation. Oh, I was selecting the wrong thing. I was like, why is that going by 10? Yeah, so I want that to be 45 degrees, and we'll start right there. And then for this, let's see, what's the best way to do this? Maybe start up here. So I just want to create steps heading down. Okay, so maybe we'll do one there. I'm going to make this, let's try 0.05. And then we'll go down to there. And we'll just make a little step here. I think we're going to need to move all this in as well. Okay, go down from there. Maybe one more. Or, oh, that's way too big. Let's try 0.06. I think I really would like this to be a little bit longer. I'm going to stretch this out quite a bit. I will fix this in Blender to make it look a little bit better. But for our purposes here, I want these to really be a little bit more visible. So I'm just going to bring them out a little bit more. Okay, I think that is pretty good. I'm not sure those are perfectly centered, but they are good enough. And then the last thing I want to do here is just add an edge. So we'll just do something like this. This is a pretty shallow pool, but that's all right. Let's change that back to 10. You know, one thing that I am seeing that I kind of wish we would have done, and I think I am going to change, is it's going to be a little bit of work, but I think it's going to be worth it. I want to raise all of this up a little bit. So I'm going to grab all of my floor. And I want this to be maybe about there. Okay. And the reason I want to do that is for a couple of reasons. I just want this pool to be a little bit deeper, but I also want there to be a little bit more room on the edges here because I want to put some lights in here. And I think it'll just look a little bit better if we do that. Okay. And then honestly, we can keep this how it is there. I think that will be fine. This, I'm going to raise this up a little bit. Go up slightly with this. Grab the lights too. And I think I'll leave this bottom part like that. And then here, let's see. I am going to just duplicate this. And that looks good there. And then I'm just going to bring this over and then push this down to right there. Again, if I was actually making game, I'd do this a little bit cleaner and just recreate an actual set of steps there. But for our purposes here, this will be fine. And then for this, again, I'm going to fix this later, but I'm just going to resize this here just to try and get something a little bit more like what I want. If I can, that might work. We are really stretching this, but that's okay. Let me also just close off this back section here, or front section. Not sure. We'll call it front. Okay. Now, we can also, I think, add some more steps in here. Let's bring all these up. Let me actually, this is kind of annoying me too. I'm going to just get the center location for that. And then I'm going to try to actually get these centered. So let's bring this out. Maybe 2 each. And then we'll go down to right there. And then I'll do the same thing for here. So I'll get the location for that. Paste that there. And go down 2 for that. And then I'll just duplicate this, move it down 2, and then we'll go, let's see, let's go to about there. And maybe do one more, 1, 2. And we'll go to about there. And then what do we want to do here? Let me see if I can just move this all down 1. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay. Again, I've got to fix this. Maybe we do this for right now. That'll be okay. I'll fix that later. Okay, I like the look of that much better. Now what we can do is grab some of these lights. And I think this will look pretty cool if we turn them like this and then put them on the sides here. Okay, let's just turn that off for right now. So if we do something like that, let's turn that light off. Yeah, I think this is going to look really good. So let's also adjust this light a little bit. I do want a light here, but I want it to be quite a bit dimmer, and I also want to change the color. I want to do something much more warm and kind of inviting. So maybe something kind of like that. Okay. And let's see, why do I feel like that is not turned on? Let me take a look at this. Okay, so to save a little bit of time, I've just added a few more settings to my light here, and I'll just quickly go through what I did here. So I added a point light to our little lights here, and in our construction script, I just created 2 new variables called use spotlight and use point light. And then I added a sequence here. So the first thing that we do is we check to see if we want to use the spotlight. If we do use the spotlight, then we set the visibility to true, and we just continue on with all of the other settings that we already created. And then if we want that to be false, then we just turn the visibility of that light off. And I also set this to be on by default. So by default, we are using the spotlight. And then the other one is use point light, which the default is off. But if we set that to be on, then we are just turning the visibility of our point light on and just doing the exact same thing with our settings above here that we created for that. So then that allows me to just go in here and I can just say, okay, I would rather use the spotlight or I would rather use the point light, and I still have access to my settings here. I also just lowered my attenuation radius just a little bit, lowered the intensity way down, and moved the light just to be a little bit cooler, which I noticed this looks quite green to me, so I am going to just grab these and just push these to be a little bit cooler. Something like around there, I think. Okay. And now I'm going to grab these and let's say maybe every 500 units. I think that's going to be too much. Let's just go 100 and I'll go maybe every 300. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And these are very cheap lights because we don't have the shadows turned on. It's just a single point light with a very, very low attenuation radius. So we're really just barely overlapping a light here. And again, there's no shadows. So it's very low cost. Okay, so I'm going to just grab all of these and flip these around. And let's just move them to be right on the edge, right about there. All right, I think that is looking pretty good. Let me go ahead and delete this guy before I forget. Now, I might add just another light in here for a little bit of ambience. Maybe something like this. Again, I'm just going to push just slightly into the blue there. And I think that's good. We'll turn shadows off. We don't need those. Yeah, I like the way that looks. Okay. Now, you're seeing a little bit of our Lumen artifacts here. We are using Lumen. This is a very common question. How do you fix that? My answer is usually to turn Lumen off. A lot of people don't like that suggestion though, because obviously you don't get any bounce lighting like this right here. I can show you ways to fake bounce lighting and to also kind of get around this. But if you do want to use Lumen, you can go in here to Final Gather and you can increase this to something higher. Something around 8, you can see pretty much fixes that. Just understand that that does have a cost. So the higher this number goes, the more FPS you might lose. Now, I mean, in a relatively simple scene like this, we're not going to run into too much. We're still getting 120 plus FPS, but that is something to keep in mind. Okay, so I am pretty happy with that, I think. I also think these lights are just a little green as well. So I'm just going to push these to be a little bit bluer, which is going to make it a little bit wider looking. Okay. Do the same thing with these. Let's see. Oh, I guess I didn't give myself an option to change the color on those. That's okay. I will do that later. For these, we'll just make that a little bluer as well. Okay. All right. Now let's also add one of these lights in this little area here. And I think what I want it to do is I want it to be kind of low like this. I'm going to delete that light for right now. And let's see, attenuation radius, let's just bump that up. Let's move this to be much warmer. Let me see, I might rather have it on the other wall. Yeah, I think I prefer that. And then I'm just going to add maybe 3 more there. Just to kind of give ourselves a little bit of visual representation of where we want to draw the eye. Okay, guys, I think we are getting there. Might kind of be done with this environment, I think. I might just add a couple of more vents in here. Oops. Add one here. And let's kind of bring this down low. And then we'll do one more over here. I actually don't really like the way that is reflecting off the light there. I'm going to bring this back over into the middle. Yeah, that's better. Okay. All right, so I really want to add some sounds to this. I think we're going to save that for another episode, though, because this episode is already getting really, really long. And I think we'll go ahead and call it there since we have kind of a complete environment now. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. I really enjoyed creating this little environment, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. If you have any suggestions, let me know as well. If you want to support me, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, of course. And you can check out the links below for a Patreon where you can support me and get a bunch of these assets. You can get all the assets that I made in this level here, as well as early access. And it's a great way to support me over there. And I also have some assets in Fab that you can check out. But yeah, I think we are done with this. Like I said, I'll come back and I'll do a little bit more with this environment to add some sounds and to really make this environment a little bit more atmospheric. So thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I will see you all next time. Take care, guys.